ولا أمة بعد أمته ولا كتاب بعد كتابه ولا شريعة بعد شريعته ولا صحابة بعد صحابته. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في القرآن المجيد والفرقان الحميد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا سنلقي عليك قولا ثقيلا صدق الله العلي العظيم وصدق رسوله النبي الكريم ونحن على ذلك من الشاهدين والشاكرين والحمد لله رب العالمين. I don't know if you guys are sick of me yet, but you guys will be but next week. Today the topic is the Qur'an in Arabic. Why not any other language, right? And this is important just because in a world riven by nationalism, where everyone believes that their language is the best, why did Allah choose Arabic? Why did Allah choose an Arab? Why did Allah not choose any other language? Why did Allah not reveal in multiple languages? And more importantly, if the Qur'an is a book of meaning, then why does it matter what language we recite it in, right? Many people say that, I have own family members that say that, why should I pray Tarāwīh? I don't understand anything. I have many people who say this. Right? There's no point for me to recite Tarāwīh or pray Tarāwīh if I don't understand anything. Right? They say, why do I sit in a Jummah khutbah? I don't understand anything. In fact, when the Russians conquered Bukhara and Samarkand in the 18th century, the first thing that they noticed about Islamic education was that they felt that Muslim kids, memorized the Qur'an without any purpose. The idea of hafad. The Russians thought that why are they sending all of their kids in these madrasas, spending hours and years memorizing the Qur'an for what purpose? They don't understand a single word. So why are we doing this? Right? This is something that we have to ask. Right? That why is a hafid of the Qur'an valued or validated in Islam? Right? And so we began, namely with the Qur'an, as we always should. And I always say this, that any lecture that doesn't contain Qur'anic verses is a lecture that is sort of worthless, right? That any relationship with Islam will demand a reckoning with the Qur'an, right? And so that's why we start off with the Qur'an, where Allah says, "Inna ja'alnahu Qur'anan Arabiyyan la'allakum ta'qilun." Or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in another ayah, "Bilisanin Arabiyyin mubin." In another ayah, Allah says, "Inna anzalna Qur'anan Arabiyya." In another ayah, Allah says, "A'jamiyyun wa Arabi." يلحدون إليه أعجمي وهذا لسان عربي مبين. So Allah uses the word Arabic in the Quran, and again, this is so important for me as an Indian Muslim. What should be my relationship with Arabic? Why is it important? And what can Arabic most importantly do to develop a relationship with Islam? I remember when I was in high school, I had a Persian classmate. He was from Iran. His whole family was atheists. They've been atheists for 2-3 generations. Spoke Farsi, but they were atheist, and he said that why would we be Muslim? Our ancestors were Zoroastrian, right? We're Persian. Persian is a superior language to Arabic. That's what he said. And I remember it shook me. I was a 15-year-old kid, had just memorized the Quran, and it shook me, and it got me thinking, why should every qawm, because that's what he asked me, a 15-year-old Persian atheist kid, his name was Kamran, and he said that why should we as a Persian qawm, which has a phenomenal 2,000, Farsi is an older language than Arabic, by the way. Farsi is an older language than Arabic. Sanskrit is an older language than Arabic. Greek is an older language than Arabic. Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala choose Arabic? Right? And he said that why should I as a Persian, have to learn Arabic to understand deen or religion? But obviously he said this in English, right? So his Farsi wasn't even that great. So, that's usually how it is. In Pakistan, there are certain segments of the community. I was just in Lahore, and they get angry if you say Ramadan. They say, no, it's Ramazan, right? They say, why are you saying Ramadan? We are not Arab. Hum Arab log nahi hai. We're not Arabs. Don't impose Arabs, this Wahhabi Arab stuff on us. This is what they say. But those same people, when they say, I'm waiting for you, instead of saying the proper Urdu statement, मैं आपका इंतजार करूँगा, they'll say, हाँ, मैं आपका wait करूँगा. So English is okay, but Arabic is not okay? This is the sort of colonized mindset, right? Everything in English and French is okay. Everything in English and French and Russian is fine. But as soon as it's Arabic, it's Wahhabi. This is the state of the ummah. This is some of the most people who have the most college degrees and all of that, right? This is their relationship, that they feel that Islam is a religion for the Arabs. Although the majority, the greatest scholars of the ummah, who are they? Imam Bukhari, he was a Tajik Farsi speaker. Imam Ghazali was a Farsi speaker. Imam Razi was a Farsi speaker. Shah Waliullah was a great Farsi speaker. Ibn Hazm was a Spanish speaker, right? So much of the ummah's brilliance happened in languages that are not in Arabic, right? These were people who are not Arabs. And I mentioned this, I don't know if I mentioned this yesterday or the day before, that what is the difference between an ummah and a nation? That, in a world riven by nationalism. In fact, when Lawrence of Arabia, people know him as the person who divided up the Ottoman Empire, he encouraged the Arabs to revolt against the Ottomans. He said that, you guys are Arabs, why are you being ruled by Turks? And he said this in Mecca and Medina, right? And he said the same thing when he went to India. He said, you guys are Indians, why are you being ruled by Turks? Right? And so this idea of nationalism has really hurt the ummah, right? Before colonialism, there was no such thing as an Afghan masjid or an Indian masjid. When you went to Mughal Delhi, you had the masjid and you had Afghans, you had Uzbeks, you had Arabs, you had Turks, you had black Muslims. That was this conception of that, you have one masjid for one ethnicity, was something, would be completely foreign. Right? That's why the great poet Muhammad Iqbal said, عجم هنوز ندانت رموز الدین ورنه دیوبند حسین احمد این چه بود عجبی است سرود بر سر منبر که ملت از وطن است چه به خبر از مقام محمد عربی است. He says that he sings on the minbar saying that the millah has a territory, that it has a geographic homeland. We don't have that geographic homeland. That how ignorant they are to the station of the Arab prophet. Salman as Faris, right? Bilal as Habsh, Suhaib as Rum, Bu Lahab as Makkah, Shaybul Ajabis. That Salman al-Farsi came from Iran. Bilal came from Ethiopia. Suhaib al-Rumi came from Greece. And Abu Lahab, he came from Mecca. He was an Arab Qurayshi. He was an uncle of the Prophet. But he's mal'oon until the day of judgment. He's cursed until the day of judgment. This is how Islam the first time ethnicity and race were upended came with the religion of Islam. This idea of what is an ummah? An ummah is an ummah that shares in values. We don't share, a tongue, an ethnicity, a blood type. None of this matters. We share in values that we worship Allah. We acknowledge the Holy Prophet as the final Prophet of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam. And that has driven the ummah for 1400 years. That has driven the ummah for 1400 years. The great Afghan king Mahmud Ghaznavi, when he was invading India, he took an idol from Somnath, which is modern day Gujarat, and he took the idol. It was built of a kilometer of gold. Mahmud Ghaznavi. And as he was riding back to Ghazna, which is in present day Afghanistan, a Hindu merchant, incredibly wealthy, comes up to him and he says that, "Oh Mahmud Ghaznavi, don't break this idol. However much this idol is worth, I will pay you double for it, but don't break this idol. This idol is dear for us." What Mahmud Ghaznavi said, he lived in the 11th century, he said that, listen, the prophet that I follow, the deen that I follow, we have not come to sell idols, we have come to break idols. And this is this idea, right, of Islam driving, where is Medina and where is Mahmud Ghaznavi in India? The fact that Islam is still driving him. When the first Mughal king, Muhammad Zahiruddin Babur, invades Hindustan, he comes in from Kabul, rides into Delhi, he has this, and we're going to do a whole lecture on Babur. Buried in Kabul, on the last 2 nights of Ramadan, what a great Sultan and King, Qaddasallahu Sirrahu. He gives a lecture right before he conquers Delhi, and he says that what drives me is what the deen of my prophet, Payghambar Ma, my prophet, it drives me. And so this idea of how did we translate the values of Islam to so many nations for 1,000 years, for 1400 years, and we will do that in America, inshallah. But we have to see how this happened for 1400 years to see how they were so successful at it. Right? How our Muslims were so successful at it for 1400 years. There are 600 million Muslims between India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. How did that happen? Right? How did we carry so much of Islam to so many people? Right? And which is why that wherever you go, whether it's France, whether it's China, whether it's Russia, whether it's America, Islamophobia is a global phenomenon. Right? And why is that? Why is it such that only Islam is targeted? This is something I think about. Wherever you go, the East or the West, why is it only Islam is demonized? Truly, this is something to think about. right? That why is it such that people, what did Iqbal say? شبیه پیش خدا بگرستیم زار مسلمانان چرا آزارند و خارند ندا آمد که نمیدانی این قوم دلی دارند و محبوبی ندارند. That one night I was weeping in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That why are only Muslims punished and reviled in this world? Why are only Muslims hated? This is something, right? No other religion seems to be demonized like we are. Why is, wherever you go, Nida Ahmad ke namidani in qawm ay Iqbal, a voice came from the unseen saying, oh Iqbal, you don't know today's Muslim. Dili daran do mahbubi nadaran. They have a heart, but they have no mahbub, they have no beloved. Right? And so if we can re-establish that relationship with ishq, and I say that ishq, when we say with love, love can only begin with the values brought by the Holy Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. Right? And one of the, I think, brilliant explanations of why the Qur'an, was revealed in Arabic, is that we have to remember that, first of all, that why does Allah reveal a new religion? Allah could have reformed Christianity, right? Allah could have reformed the religion of Isa alayhi salam. Allah could have reformed the religion of Musa alayhi salam. Why does Allah reveal a new Qur'an? Right? Why does Allah raise a new prophet? Allah could have done Khatm al-Risala on Sayyidina Isa. No? Couldn't He have done that? But why does He raise another prophet? هو الذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة. Right? And there are many reasons. The first, as I mentioned yesterday, is that Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam made a dua. رَبَّنَا وَبَعَثْ فِيهِمْ رَسُولًا. Oh Allah, send a prophet from amongst my progeny of Sayyidina Ismail. In the valley of Arabia, and Sayyidina Ibrahim is the father of prophets. Right? Of course that dua is going to be accepted. The second thing is that you have to remember is that what language is Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam? Many people have this mistaken belief that all of the prophets spoke Arabic. Arabic is, the first instance we have of Arabic is in the 4th century. It's just one inscription of Imr al-Qais. It's just one, that's it, the 4th century. So neither did Sayyidina Isa speak Arabic, neither did Sayyidina Musa speak Arabic, neither did Sayyidina Nuh or Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam speak Arabic. This we can say with much conviction. Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam, it's tough to say because Allah says in the Qur'an, وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. Allah taught Adam alayhi salam all of the languages. So maybe Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam knew Arabic. But that's sort of it. But what we can say is that the languages that all of these prophets spoke came from the Semitic tradition. Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam spoke Akkadian. Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam spoke Hebrew. And Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam spoke with which language? Aramaic, Syriac, Suryani, as we say. Right? And what we can see with Arabic, I spent a couple of months studying Syriac and Aramaic, and what we can see is that Arabic, it's phenomenal how it works, is that it's actually a culmination of all of these previous Semitic languages. That all of the beauty that is in Akkadian, Hebrew, and Aramaic exists in Arabic. In fact, when the Israeli state was being constructed in the 1930s, they did not have a language. They didn't speak Hebrew, right? In the way that, by the way, the only language from the antique world. When we say antique world, we mean the 5th, 6th century. And what languages were dominant then? Sanskrit, Old Persian. Old Persian is language that Sayyidina Salman al-Farsi spoke. Greek, Latin. None of these languages, and Arabic. The only language that is still spoken from that time is Arabic today, which is wild to think about. All of those languages are dead languages. Arabic is the only language that is still spoken. This is, a very sort of, easy historical lesson to make, right? And so, when we look at Arabic as a language, one of the singular features of the Semitic sort of language groups is the triliteral verbal system. That from one word, you can take out dozens of words. It's related to dozens of words. When you just look at, one word of Rasul, which means messenger. You have Risala, which means message. You have Tarsil, you have Irsal, you have Istirsal. No other language tradition other than the Semitic language tradition has this. Right? And so the fact that Arabic not only was a Semitic language, but also contains all of the languages, all of the previous Semitic languages, makes Arabic the prime choice. And I say this is important because of the fact that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to choose a language, Allah is going to choose a language that is the most expansive, that can contain all of the values. right? And so that's why any fiqh argument that you make, or any hadith argument that you make, is a language-based argument, right? You're gonna look at the roots of every single word, right? And more significantly, when we look at the mission of the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet comes to what? Complete religions, right? Al-yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum. Allah has completed for you your religion. In a hadith in Sahih Muslim, the Prophet said, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. I've only been sent to complete good character. So that means that it had already started, right? And so you can look at the development, right, of human history through the prophets. You can look at the development of human history through the prophets, right? And trace how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is building up to the Holy Prophet, right? And that's why the last, right, they say, al-akhiru khayr. The last is the best, right? Because it contains all of the values of the previous traditions. And so which is why when people ask these perennialist questions, that why can I just follow Judaism, or why can I just follow Christianity, or why can I just follow Buddhism? Doesn't everything lead back to God? Why do I have to follow Islam? And this is what we say, that Islam is a culmination of the values of all of the previously revealed religions in one religion. Right? It's all of the values of the previous religions in one religion, as we heard today. مَا كَانَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ يَهُودِيًّا وَلَا نَصْرَانِيًّا وَلَكِنْ كَانَ حَنِيفًا مُسْلِمًا. Sayyidina Ibrahim was neither Jewish nor Christian, but rather he was a God-fearing Muslim. He was from the Hanifiyya. Right? And so Islam as a religion then comes, that if you want to take the values, all of the values that Allah has revealed from the beginning of, remember the first revelation happens in paradise with Sayyidina Adam. If you want to take all of that revelation in one religion, that then becomes Islam. And this is what we're saying when we say Khatamun Nabiyyin, that follow Islam. Because all of the values that Allah has revealed on the face of this earth is contained in this religion of Islam. So then it becomes necessary. And that's why Allah says, وَمَنْ يَبْتَغِي غَيْرَ الْإِسْلَامِ دِينًا فَلَا يُقْبَلَ مِنْهُ. Whoever follows a religion other than Islam, it will never be accepted from them. Right? Because Islam then becomes that final culmination of all of these value systems, of which language is so important. Because we cannot exist as human beings without language. Allah cannot communicate to us without language. We cannot express ideas without language. That's what distinguishes us from animals and from other creatures. Right? And this idea of language is what creates dialogue between different nations and different ethnicities and different qawms. The fact that, I look at Urdu as a language. Urdu as a language, you can say about 45% of the language is Arabic. That is a wild thing. 70% of Farsi is just classical Fusha. I always tell people, there is more Arabic in Farsi than there is in Egyptian Arabic. There is more Arabic in Farsi, there is more Quranic Arabic in Farsi than there is in Egyptian Arabic. If you say a couple sentences in Farsi as opposed to Egyptian Arabic, you'll hear more of the Qur'an in Farsi than you will hear in Egyptian Arabic, which is wild. Right? And this is something that we don't think about. So how did it happen that so many words and so many ideas were translated from one qawm, from one people to another people? Right? And this is how that happens. I mean, you think about English, right? Muslims have been in America for 75 years. How many Arabic words are in English? Jihad, Allahu Akbar. 2 words. 70% of Farsi is classical Quranic Arabic. How did that happen? Right? This is that translation. And as I keep mentioning, that translation is so important. From the Lawh al-Mahfuz to the noble heart of the Prophet. From the noble heart of the Prophet to the tongue of the Prophet. From the tongue of the Prophet to the local Arabs, to the Sahaba. And from the Sahaba, they carry that translation from Wahy to all people. Right? To the Iranians, to the Afghans, to the Indians, to the Ethiopians, to the West Africans, to the Spanish. There was a language in Spain called Ajamiyado. It was 80% Arabic, 20% Spanish. Right? And so that translation then becomes important. And you see why, just like Allah chose one prophet, Allah has chosen one language in which to base wahy. That doesn't mean the only language that is important is Arabic. Right? And that's why the Muslims used to say there are 3 languages of Islam: Arabic, Persian, and Turkish. In the 13th century, you could not be an alim, you could not be a scholar unless you knew these 3 languages. Arabic, Persian, and Turkish. You could not be an alim of deen. The Ottoman Empire, in the 18th century, put out a flyer saying that we need a mufti. The mufti has to know Arabic, he has to know Farsi, he has to know Turkish, and he has to know Greek and Latin. Right? And this is, and this is amazing, because now people neither know their own language, nor do they even know English properly. Right? This is why people don't even know English. You know, you ask someone to write a basic essay, they can't even write an essay. You know, but this is wild, right? Like we have lost language, and the miracle of the Qur'an is a miracle of language, right? The i'jaz of the Qur'an, the miracle of the Qur'an is a language-based miracle, right? And we see that in the way that history has unfolded. How many languages have been impacted by just Arabic? No other language has had such an impact in the world, right? And the most important thing is that through the Qur'an, through the Arabic language, the language of wahi was translated, which means, and this is so important, which means that when we say no sentence is neutral, right? So for example, in English, when we say that I want to pray, prayer actually means the translation of dua. It's not the translation of namaz or salah. For example, in Arabic, you would never say usalli fi qalbi, or dar dil namaz mein kuna, or namaz mein khana, or apne dil mein namaz padhta hu. But in English, you can say, I can pray in my heart. And that's why today you hear, what do people say? I don't need to pray. I'm a good person. Don't they say that? I pray in my heart. I don't need to pray. They say stuff like that. And that happens because of language, right? Language changes a person. And that's why I say, in America, one of the biggest tragedies is that people have lost their languages. People have lost their language. That means that translation act that happened between the language of the Prophet and all of these various ethnicities has been lost. And that we have to start again, unfortunately. Maulana Rumi said, Parsi go agar che Arabi or shirin tarast. Speak Farsi even though Arabic is so much more beautiful. Agar che ishq ra sad zuban digar ast. Love has 100 more languages. Because that's what wahi is. It's a language of love. It's a language of love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And so if we have done that in the past, have translated the values of wahi into all of these other languages, right? And what that meant was that if a child learned a language impacted by Arabic, they were in fact learning Islam. Without even studying fiqh or hadith, they were just learning Islam, but just by virtue of their language. There is, people come up to me and say that, my kids disrespect me. And I say that, what language do you speak at home with your kids? They say, we live in America, we speak English. And I'm like, that's where it starts. The bay'adabi, the lack of respect, is built into the English language. In Arabic, or in Farsi or in Urdu, these are languages of respect. Maulana Rumi says, As khuda adabra me juyam, bay'adab man mahrum as fazli rab. I forget the first line. That the only thing I seek in this world is adab from Allah. That man who is without adab, he is deprived from the grace of Allah. Right? And so we have deprived ourselves, and that act of adab, it's very hard to teach someone adab without language. I'll say it very plainly. You cannot teach, just in the way that you address elders. Right? In English, you only have the word you. In Arabic, you have antum. In Farsi, you have shuma. In Urdu, you have ap. Right, and the widespreadness of disrespect, I can say, very much happens with language. And we are a people of adab. We are a people of akhlaq. And that is only going to happen truly and truly with language. And so when we hear the Qur'an, when we study Islam, it all is going to come back really to Arabic. And I say this as a Muslim, who loves Urdu and Farsi more than anything in the world. These two languages have done things more to me than anything else. But as Muslims, the fact that Allah has chosen this, and Allah says, Allahu yakhtasu bi rahmatihi man yasha. Right? That Allah chooses whomsoever or whatsoever what He wills. And significantly, Allah says, Inna ja'alnakum Qur'anan Arabiyyan la'allakum ta'qilun. That we have made the Qur'an in Arabic so that you may have intelligence. So that's why the ulama say that the purpose of the Qur'an is to make you an intelligent person. To make you have aql. Right? There is that thing that if you truly study the Qur'an, you will be an intelligent person. And so this idea of intellectual development and building of the ummah will happen only through the Arabic language. Much of what we have been able to offer the world has only been because of the fact that our ulama were so proficient in Arabic. And I'll say this, that one of the major causes of the downfall of Muslims that happened in the 19th and 20th century was that when Europeans came, they said the Arabic is not your language. This is the language for the Arabs. And once that nationalism starts, that's how you begin to divide Muslims from their past. right? And once that severing happens, once that cutting off happens, then how can you and I as Muslims represent Islam truthfully in the world? Right? And why have Muslims, and this is a question to ask, right? Why have Muslims only been consumer of values and not producer of values? Muslims are just consumers today. You know, when I was in Samarkand just, like 2 years ago, it broke my heart that the city of Islamic culture and thought was just a mimicry of St. Petersburg and Moscow in Russia. It broke my heart. And when you go to Morocco, they try to make the country just like Paris. When you go to Cairo or Lahore, they try to build it off of London. Right? And that idea of blindly following other cultures, of other civilizations, happened because we don't understand what our language is and what our values are and how we can offer that to other people. And if we as Muslims want to share our values with other people, just like it happened for 1,000 years, it's not something new. We have shared our values for 1,000 years, and inshallah we will do it again. But that's only going to happen if we can spread our values. When Europeans colonized our lands, one of the things that they did, they started translation projects. So for example, the Enlightenment is this long European sort of philosophical tradition. They translated it into Arabic as tanweer. Tanweer in Arabic means the illumination of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do you see how if you're someone who is reading Arabic, how that will confuse you? Right? And so this act that we as Muslims have not written our history well in the past 200 years, and we as Muslims, because of that cutting off of Arabic, cutting off of the Qur'an, we have not been able to share our system and our values with other people, and we have only been consumers and been violence has been committed to us in our tongues and in the way that we live and interact in the world, right? And so I say again, as Allah says in the Qur'an, بِلِسَانٍ عَرَبِيٍّ مُبِينٍ, that just as Muslims showed their beauty to the world through this clear Arabic tongue, in which that other nations could only but be dazzled by what Muslims could offer the world, and in which that no longer exists today. I think that if we as Muslims can have a true reckoning of what our values are through our language, we can truly achieve so much. And I say it every single day, that the world needs us more than any other time in history. The non-Muslims need us more than any other time in history. And when we talk about Maulana Rumi, we'll have a whole talk on Maulana Rumi later on. Maulana Rumi was a New York Times bestseller for 25 years until he was overtaken by the great Rupi Kaur. In 2016, Milk and Honey overtook the Mathnawi, but the translation that they were reading of Maulana was a misrepresentation of his Farsi poetry, and there was 5% of what Maulana Rumi was saying. And so much of America experienced incredible and limitless joy through a misrepresentation of Maulana Rumi's poetry. Imagine if they saw the real thing. Truly, imagine if they saw the real thing. And what is Maulana Rumi but just one lamp of the Holy Prophet, alayhi salatu wassalam. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us tawfiq. I wanted to mention a couple of other things. Unfortunately, people have said and have done, in our education systems, in our countries, there are more Arabic books written in the cities of Delhi, Lahore, and Kabul than the cities of Baghdad and Damascus and Cairo for 800 years. Arabic was a global tongue. It's not anybody's property. It's the property of Allah, right? And Europeans have done a number, colonialism has done a number on us where we believe that this is not our tongue. Arabic, as soon as you become Muslim, Arabic is your language. And never forget that. As soon as you become Muslim, Arabic is your language, right? And don't let anyone ever tell you that Arabic is the language of Arabs. No, Arabic is the language of the ummah of the Prophet. Whoever follows the Prophet is entitled to Arabic. And as Iqbal says, "Ba Mustafa berizan khishra kedi hamaus agar una rasidi tamam bulaha beast." Bring yourself to reach the self of Mustafa. If you don't reach Mustafa, everything else is Abu Lahab. Everything we see today is truly the culture of Abu Lahab. وصلى اللهم على سيدنا وسندنا ورسولنا وحبيبنا محمد برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Tomorrow we'll be talking about AI and ChatGPT and sort of how do we as muftis and how do we as Muslims